Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Great topic, a new one, and I love it. Let's do it. What's your story about the one that got away that turned into a gigantic bullet dodged? A little not safe for work. Please remember to like, share, tell us your story, and subscribe. I've told this story before in another post. Anyway, I was engaged to this guy who was apparently engaged to this other girl too. I dumped him, of course, and they got married. He strangled her to death. Talked to a girl over text for a while that I was attracted to, but it never really went anywhere. A couple of years later, see a news article that she was arrested for domestic terrorism for conspiring to plant bombs at her workplace. They found fan art of her favorite serial killer at her home and discovered that she had been sending mail to him in jail through a full-on undercover FBI investigation. Was always curious what became of my high school girlfriend, aka that girl that tolerated my presence in high school and made out with me a couple of times, so I stalked her a bit on Facebook. Turns out, she's happily married to some lady, with a house in the country and like 1 billion dogs. So, clearly this would not have worked out, as I'm allergic to dogs. Was incredibly close to a gorgeous girl in my friend group. We'd dance at raves together, make out drunk, and talk on the phone for hours most nights. Whenever I'd ask her out on a date, she'd say, "I don't think I'm ready for a boyfriend yet, but I like what we have." Well, eventually, she starts dating an ex-con. They start doing meth together. She runs a few $1,000s on her dad's credit card and gets kicked out of her house. She moves in with her, now BF, and a friend, then one day her BF trashes the place in a meth rage, so they get kicked to the streets. A few years go by, and she's been arrested a few dozen times and serves a 3-year prison sentence. Back in high school, I met a guy who had the same birthday as my dad and my grandfather. He was also left-handed, just like my dad and grandfather. We clicked instantly, and I thought these were all the signs we were meant to be. But for some reason, every time he asked me out, I got an overwhelming weird feeling and said no. Eventually, he moved on, and I kicked myself for the longest time for messing things up with my soulmate. Then he dated my friend. He took her somewhere remote and got her high, then assaulted her. My very first girlfriend, whom I truly loved at the ripe age of 17, dating for about 7 months. We had plans to move interstate together. She moved first to secure the accommodation. I was to follow a week later once I'd finished working. 2 days and she told me not to bother because she'd met someone. I was devastated. For a whole year afterwards. She ended up marrying the guy and moved in with him and his best friend. Lived together happily for a few years, no issues with the marriage whatsoever. One summer, ex-girlfriend, hubby, and housemate all decided to go on a 3-week road trip together. Partway through, hubby gets called back to work and has to fly home. Ex and housemate finished the trip and returned home. Upon returning, ex and housemate announced they discovered their undying love for each other on the trip and would henceforth be an item. Hubby, understandably crushed. Here's the kicker. Not only did the 3 of them live together, so hubby had to listen to them effing every night, but hubby and housemate worked together in the same company, in the same cubicle, directly opposite each other. I mean, it's pretty safe to say and rest assured that this is not the last guy she's going to do this to. So your roommate, or maybe former roommate, he'll be on the chopping block before you know it. I kind of have the opposite version. She was lying to me about doing BDSM shows. She did a hook suspension thing and hid the scars for a long time. And when I found out, she threw a crazy fit, cut herself, threatened to kill herself, took Ambien and chugged rum, yelled that she hates me, yelled that she loves me. She'd never said that before. Cried in her bedroom until she fell asleep. I tried to forgive her, but it got worse. More lying and gaslighting. Broke up with her. I was too old and too happy on my own to put up with that. Now she's doing really well, and grew a lot and went to school and built a career doing graphic design. Weirdly, it's what I do, and she never expressed any interest. When we were together, she worked at a credit card call center and never tried to change anything, despite me trying to encourage her. High school girlfriend who was a lot of firsts for me. She also cheated on me multiple times, introduced me to a lot of substances that I definitely didn't need, etc. Anyway, sometimes after getting arrested or expelled, I finally got my head out of my ass and realized that I was just being used for different things. It was still super difficult though. First tend to have that effect, I think. She promptly had a kid with one of the scumbags in town, holy bullet dodge, and then another with another scumbag a couple of years later. Went quite a while without speaking to her until she messaged me randomly one day. Thought, oh wow, might be nice to catch up and mend some of the past, since I still cared about her as a person. Then she immediately asked me for money. Well, guess you're still the same person. She passed away about a year ago from an OD. Her mom in her 60s is now taking care of 2 young children by herself in a state pretty far away. My heart breaks for all of them. Wish she could have realized that there were people who loved her. Wish she was still here to take care of her boys. Wish a lot of things. I dated a guy for a few months and I really liked him, but something just started to feel off. He was never aggressive or weird, but still, there was something that didn't feel right. I ended up breaking up with him over text. I know, horrible, but I was a teenager and didn't want to break up face to face. He then said things like he hoped I would commit suicide, but never straight to me, to my best friend who had introduced us. In fact, I've never heard or saw from him again. Until a while after. Apparently, he stabbed the girl he started dating when she told him she wanted to break up. He then injured her in other ways, ran from the cops, and even attacked a cop before being arrested in a neighboring country. So yeah, even though I really liked him, I'm glad my spidey sense was tingling. I really liked this guy. I was a terrible flirt, but we eventually did date. I ignored some red flags pointing out some mental illness and anger problems, but they became much more apparent after we started dating. He really needed some therapy or some form of help for his depression. His anger was really scary in hindsight. He was obsessed with an ex and did a lot of online stalking, complaining about her and wishing harm or death on her. We dated for 2 weeks before he dumped me for a chance with his ex. That didn't last long and he came running back, but I refused to get back together. He would beg, demand, or bug me nonstop any time we would run into each other or talk over text or social media. I got sick of it and blocked him. I stupidly unblocked after a few years, thinking he wouldn't bother me anymore. He eventually realized he could message me again and was very quick to pick up where he left off. I blocked him again, this time for good. I'm sure he talks about me the same way he talked about his other ex, despite it being years since we last spoke. But I hope he got some help. He had a lot of potential to be abusive as hell. Mine is the one that got away. Didn't know I dodged the bullet until that bullet somehow swooped around the world and I still got shot. I had a massive crush on one of my older brother's friends in high school, all-star field hockey player and an artist. For some reason, my bro's friends liked me and I could tag along to picnics and parties. She would hang out with me, but like a babysitter when I was clearly out of place, and we'd draw and sculpt, teach me to play field hockey while everyone was drinking. I was 13, she was 16. Fast forward 12 years, I'm at a beach with my brother and his friends. Show up for the weekend, including her. Once again, a lot of drinking, and we're the only people keeping it at a low simmer, preferring to go swimming, running on the beach, playing frisbee, handling the grill. One night, we were the last people standing, and she put her head on my shoulder and said I made her weekend. We hooked up, and she told me she was going to break up with her boyfriend back where she lived. News to me, but I thought, oh my god, the woman that I dreamed about is infatuated with me, Yahtzee. Eventually, we moved in together, got married, despite my brother, her sister, her mom, and her friends privately warning me to watch out, that she's a sneak. Turns out, she was a functional alcoholic and hid the actual amount she drank, and she cheated on me multiple times. She was very, very good at lying and living 2 lives at once. I never even suspected anything for 5 years. I should have seen that gigantic bullet coming, everyone else did. Instead, I took that one straight in the heart. Not really one that got away, but a guy I was dating for a few weeks. I've told this story before on here. But after our last date, he pushed me up against my car and said, "Don't F this up." There were a few other major red flags before that, but that was enough for me to cut him out of my life. I completely avoided him after that. Luckily, he didn't know where I lived at that point. I'd go to see him. Saw him once a month or 2 later at a Christmas party, and he had a new girlfriend. Told her to be careful because he had crazy eyes, and I was a bit worried for her. I want to say maybe a year later, guess whose mugshot comes across the news? She broke up with him, so he showed up at her house in the middle of the night drunk, dragged her onto the front lawn by her hair, and started strangling her after he busted into the house. Neighbors called the cops. When they arrived, he shot both of them. One in the neck, one in the leg. Somehow the cop shot in the neck was the one able to get him in cuffs. 3 counts of attempted murder. F that guy. Of all the drugs we discuss here on this page and different posts and forums, I would say that arguably one of the strongest and most dangerous drugs is nostalgia. Be careful with it. Very addictive. My first high school girlfriend. I was a freshman. She was a sophomore. Points scored there. I was a short, skinny white dude, and she was a curvy, beautiful black woman. We dated for 9 months, and of course, in that time, my adolescent mind thought she was the one. After 9 months, she out of the blue breaks up with me and starts dating a girl. No big deal, just came as a surprise. A decade and some later, and I'm happily married with 3 beautiful children, and she's sitting in prison for statutory rape of a 14-year-old girl. The accusations took place in 2017. My senior year was 2011. She seemed really great, fun to be with, and everything was a breath of fresh air, but just bad timing because I was planning to move when we met, so only had 3 months together. We were planning to meet up when she was in the area about a year later, but a new girl I had seen a couple of times had her apartment robbed, and I was helping her that weekend. And we got closer, and I felt bad ditching her, so I told the old girl I was busy. The new girl is now my wife, which is nice. Getting robbed was a great twist of fate. Years later, the old girl starts posting daily affirmation videos on Instagram, laying out all her struggles with mental health and anger and self-destructive stuff, which is fine, but included in that were descriptions of year-long battles with sex addiction and serial dishonesty with partners. She's not a bad, selfish person. She was just in a lot of pain from early trauma. Mom was cold to her and then died when she was 12, but I would have gotten her too. There was a girl I was pretty in love with throughout college. When we met, she had a long-distance boyfriend, but we got super close. Weekly dinners, meeting on campus multiple times a week to hang out, etc. She broke up with her boyfriend one summer. Then when she got back in town, she and I went to a movie and had dinner. A couple months later, she was dating someone else. At the time, I really kicked myself. When I look back on some interactions, I really think I had a shot that I was just too scared to take. I kept thinking if I made a move, I could ruin this friendship that meant so much to me, not really thinking about the fact that post-graduation, we would only see each other once or twice before she moved across the country with her then husband. Now, I'm gay, and really glad I never tried to get in a serious relationship with a woman. I was gay then too, of course, but deeply closeted. Seems like she had a great life, and is still an awesome person, but I probably would have made us both miserable if we had ever tried to make it work. I met her when we were in high school. Her name was Jessie, and she was the first girl who paid attention to me. I was head over heels in love with her, just absolutely swooning. We dated, as much as you can say that as 2 14-year-old kids, holding hands in the hallway between classes, long conversations on the phone after school, going to the movies and cuddling, that kind of thing. She was also my first kiss. It was as much your first love as you could possibly get. I was barely a teenager, and I was convinced she was going to be my wife someday. If you've ever been 14, you know how it goes. She moved away after freshman year of high school, about 30 minutes to another school district, but to a kid who couldn't even legally drive for another 2 years, she may as well be on the moon. I, of course, was devastated. We remained friends, but I always wanted more. Jessie kinda kept me around because she liked the attention and always teased at getting back together, but that never amounted to anything. It wasn't until I was much older that I realized how manipulative and shitty she was with that. Obviously, she broke up with me when she moved and went on to date a whole slew of characters all throughout high school, eventually landing on her second cousin at 17. They dated for a while, and even though her family was pretty accepting, everybody seemed to acknowledge that was really effing weird. Sometime after that, she broke up with him for some guy she just met, and they hightailed it to Alaska after graduation. From there, they took skiing lessons, where she fell in love with the ski instructor and dumped the dude she drove to Alaska with. The poor bastard had to drive all the way the hell home to the Midwest, and she wound up having a kid with the ski dude. That was years ago now, and we've since fallen out of touch, as I've long since moved on with my life. Last I heard, she dumped a ski instructor dude and went on to her next guy. Not so much the one that got away, so much as she felt like it at the time when I was 14 and just figuring things out, but man, am I glad she dumped me. I met him while he was working at a hookah bar on my birthday, and I just took his number because I thought he was cute. Spent the whole summer together, took me on my first vacation, and then took me abroad to meet his whole family, and I thought my prayers had been answered. I was so happy. Turns out, he had a lot of insecurities from his last relationship that he projected onto me. Didn't let me wear certain clothes, had to Snapchat him every 15 minutes when we weren't together, no male friends, and he kept pictures and videos of exes and hookups from the past. I asked him several times to delete out of respect for our relationship, and all the while, he would slut-shame me for dating people before him and try and get me to expose myself by asking me questions in circles to see if I ever lied about my body count or any of my sexual history. I wish I had come to my senses before I dropped my life and moved for him, but I'm finally moved on, and at least I didn't waste any more time than I needed to. On the bright side, I did discover a love for travel and am currently in Rome, and it feels good to be here, single. So, she was the one who got away, but then I finally got my chance and was hit by every bullet she had in the chamber until I finally ended things. We matched on Tinder in our freshman year of college, and it was awesome. We met up for a lovely little coffee date and then met up again shortly after to study together. We kissed, she went home, and then she ghosted me. It was so weird because I felt like everything was going fine and she disappeared. She even had receipts on, and I would occasionally check to see if she read my text message, but she never opened it. During our second semester, she answered my text message as if a few months hadn't just gone by, which I thought was so strange, but whatever. It was nice to talk to her again. We kept talking until I broke it to her that I was transferring to another school in the state, and after that I rarely heard from her. It wasn't like I was in a huge state. It might have been about an hour drive from her school to my school, so trying to date after I transferred wasn't infeasible. So now it's our second semester, sophomore year, and we start talking again. I don't remember what sparked it. She came to my school a few times and we would hang out, study, and a good amount, and it was lovely. And I thought things were really good between us for about 2 weeks, and then she ghosted me again. I'm laughing now thinking back on it. So, maybe 2 years have passed, and it's our senior year of college. Somehow we got to talking again, and we went on a few dates, and it actually stuck this time. We graduated and moved in together, and this is where I feel like I should have recognized a bunch of obvious red flags that I ignored because I was so infatuated with this girl. She was extremely selfish, showed signs of being a narcissist, and I ignored all of these signs because she disguised them really well as being a quirky person. She was extremely manipulative and a compulsive liar, and worked me just like she would work other people. Eventually, she started cheating on me and gaslighting me and fell into a horrible depression and finally couldn't take it anymore, trying to keep this relationship together with someone who didn't care about me, so I broke up with her. So I didn't dodge the bullet when I had 2 opportunities to dodge the bullet. I wish I had, but I learned a lot of valuable lessons from this relationship, and I think pulling myself out of that deep hole, I was able to be a much more healthy and happy person. Cheers to healing. If you're in a new relationship and your partner starts making demands and telling you how to dress and how not to dress and to constantly check in and do all of these things, major red flags. Do yourself a favor, get out while you can. Just go, okay? That's it. And that completes my TED Talk. In my early 20s, I was working as a bartender in a local Greek restaurant on the lake. Owners hire one of his friend's daughters who had just moved up from Tallahassee, Florida. She's also working as a massage therapist. But is serving to get by until that picks up, just out of school. We hit it off immediately, and things got hot and heavy fast. Basically turned into a 3-month F-fest until one day it comes out that she has a boyfriend, and I was being used to keep her company until they could be together again. Classic. No problem. I go about my life. She moved back to Tallahassee. Fast forward 10 years, and I look her up on a whim. Turns out, she got strung out on coke and meth, ended up driving her car over him and killing him during an argument that had a drug deal gone south. Now she's locked up in a Florida prison. No idea if or when she will be released, but you talk about dodging a damn bullet? And that, kids, is how I learned not to stick my dick in crazy.